Hello and welcome back to the Praying Twice podcast. I'm Martin Doman and I'm super excited to have you here with us. Music is transformative. It's transformative. It changes us. All of us have things in our life that we want to change. I have things in my life I want to change. I want to be different. I want to be better. I want to be more. I want to live my life in a better way. And I spend a lot of time and a lot of energy with certain negative thought patterns. I don't know about you, but I do that. Like this will never change, or this situation I'm in, or I can't change. This won't change. I'm just stuck. It's not going to work. This isn't going to work. Just negative thought patterns, ways of thinking about certain situations that are negative. They don't help us progress. They don't help us reach a happier place. They just drag us down. And music can help to change those thought patterns. You can listen to a song and it will change the way you think about something depending on how it's written and depending what the lyrics are and the words and the combination of all that together. It can change the way we think. It's transformative. I've been in situations where I couldn't see a solution. I couldn't figure out what to do next. And I was frustrated, or I was just, and I'm talking about big things here, like big problems, whether it's a relational problem or a job issue or just a way we think about something. And we can't get past it, and we just kind of give up. We get depressed or we get discouraged. And then you hear a song. Like I said, I've been in that situation where I realize, oh my gosh, I'm thinking about this all wrong. You see what I mean? Music can be transformative. It can change the way we are, the way we think about things. We can take a whole new perspective on life based upon, something we hear. Last episode, or the first episode, I said, who knew a song could do that? Well, who knew that a song can express a certain idea in a way that just penetrates us and makes us think differently about some problem? I want to talk about this. This is amazing that the music can do that. We need to start thinking about changing ourselves and being able to see how music can help us do that. So I realized another thing, I want to talk more about that. Another thing I realized that I've been neglecting to do is talk about the name of a podcast. Also, my background today is different. You may have noticed. I had a friend who's in videography, Miguel. Thank you, Miguel. And he gave me some really good advice about how to do my lighting and my setup. And if you're just listening and you're not watching, I have just kind of a different configuration in my space here. So thank you, Miguel, for that. I appreciate that. But I haven't even talked to you about the name of the podcast and why it's called Praying Twice. Well, it goes back to this idea that we talked about earlier of music can just elevate mere words. A great man, Saint Augustine, who lived in I think it was the early century, 500 AD. He said, the person who sings prays twice. So you can pray, or you can pray by singing. And when you pray by singing, it's praying twice. So that's where the idea comes from, this idea that music can just take mere words or ideas that, are valuable in themselves. But when you add song to it, it brings it up another level. It creates another experience. And that's what this podcast is about. So there you go. In this podcast, I also want to talk to you a little bit more about my own story, my own journey with music. In the last episodes, I was sharing a little bit more about my story and about how I kind of came to experience faith, experience God's love through music and through some transformative experiences, and how music was very intertwined into that. In this podcast, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how I learned how to use music to transmit these ideas and these good inspirational things to people through music by creating music. So I went from being a listener of music and someone who was impacted by it, and it transformed my life, into somebody who has learned how to create that same experience and what it's like to do that. It's an amazing honor to be able to make music for people, to be able to bring people something that I've created or something that I've participated in, and inviting them into a deep spiritual experience through that. And that's what I've been able to do in my music career. I haven't been a full-time musician my whole career. I've had different jobs. I've had a lot of different jobs actually. Um, but my my really, my main superpower, if you will, is that I can use music to help people pray. I just have a gift for that. So a little bit more about the story, and how music was transformative in my story. Not only, like I said earlier, in receiving it, but in transforming other people's lives through it. So when I was still in high school, I started to play guitar, and my friends and I were starting to learn certain songs on guitar because all the guys in all of the students at the school I went to they were all really into guitar. I went to a small school, Koinonia Academy in New Jersey. Long story, can't get into it now, but I did mention it before. And so I started learning to play guitar, and I remember putting on retreats. We were at this school, like a religious school, and we would go to other places and put on retreats for other students. And I remember the first time I ever played music, like in a church by myself. I remember sitting in this church in, I think it's like Wayland, New York, New York, upstate New York. And I remember playing a song that I had heard that I had picked up and just singing it in the church all by myself, in this big room, very echoey, and just playing my guitar and singing. And I realized that I had a voice. I had something that I could share musically with people. And it was beautiful. And I remember there were other people there that said, wow, that was really good. So that was kind of cool. And then when I got to college, I went to Franciscan University of Steubenville. And if you remember, I'd mentioned a youth conference that I went to earlier at that, it was the same place the youth conference was. And on the campus there with the students, there's a lot of music. There's a lot of music at Mass, praise and worship music. We even had like prayer meetings where we would get together and just play music and sing praise to God. So music was very, very highly developed at this school. And I, of course, love that. And so I started to, during that summer right before college, I really started to learn how to sing. I learned how to sing like with that vibrato sound in my voice and started to imitate other artists. I remember trying to learn a song by Boys to Men. And then another song, another set of music I tried to learn to sing to was the musical Les Miserables. There's these really operatic voices and just powerful singing. And I tried to imitate that, and I found that I could do it. And I was like, wow, I can sing. I'd always had a good voice, and I was always considered a good singer, but I'd never really thought of myself as a soloist up to that point. So anyway, I learned how to play guitar, learned how to sing, go to college, and I auditioned for the music ministry there at the college. And as I got involved in the music ministry there for church, and I was assigned to play on Fridays at 6:25. The mass at 6:25. It was right after dinner. And at this college, a lot of students went to mass, went to church every day. And that was really new to me as well. Different story, but it was really cool. And so I got to play for a very packed audience in the church. And playing for mass is different than just doing a performance on a stage. It's focused on God, and I'm second. And I really liked that because it took the focus off of me. I was very scared of having everyone look at me and focus on me. And if I had gotten in front of a stage of people to sing music, I would have been much more nervous. But anyway, I started singing at these masses, and I was really struck because people would come up to me after mass sometimes, and like sometimes with tears in their eyes, and say, "What you just sang at this mass, it really touched me. It really helped me. Thank you so much." And I was a little bit taken aback by this. Maybe I had a little bit of imposter syndrome, but I was kind of like, wow, I wasn't even paying attention that much while I was singing this. I mean, I was focused on the music, but I wasn't thinking about how is this song going to impact other people? How is this going to touch people? Um, that was a new experience for me to have someone tell me that they thanked me for something that I did that I would have done anyway, that I liked it. And, I probably got a big head about it. For a few years at college, I got sort of taught to be humble with music by some of the staff there at the school that could tell I was getting kind of a little arrogant about my music. And I think that's a danger for any musician who's talented and has a gift. It's easy to think, oh, look at me, everyone's gonna like me now. And I went through some stuff in my teenage years where I wasn't liked a lot. And so this was a new experience for me. I could do music and people liked it. People liked me because I did music. Um, and certainly that was a wonderful feeling to have, but it caused me to sort of evaluate myself through it. In other words, I saw my value as attached to my gift, as opposed to just being valuable myself. And that's another pitfall that can happen with music, where um, when someone criticizes your music or says, "Oh, you should do it this way," you get sort of personally offended. That's a danger that can happen with music because it's so personal. Anyway, I digress. So the story goes that after going through years of college, I started to get more and more involved in music, and I decided I really wanted to record some music. So I started off recording in the summer, kind of like a mixtape on a cassette tape. Remember cassette tapes? Uh, you don't know or you don't remember, but um, I recorded using this little 8 track that my friend had. And I recorded songs from my girlfriend, I think she was my fiance at that point, who was not my wife. And I sang, kind of like love songs. I think I sang All I Ask of You from Phantom of the Opera and some other songs. Some songs were about God, but a lot of them were just love songs. And it was my first try at recording it, and it was not very good. I would not release those recordings, but it was cool because I was starting to learn about that. And I got a friend my senior year, Joe Lester, really good dude, and he offered to help me record. I paid him, but it was very reasonable cost to record an actual album of my church music. And I remember we recorded it. It took 2 weeks, and we did it at night in the offices of the chapel there, where no one was around, so it was quiet, and it was the right environment. And we just recorded this album, sorry, that I called Praying Twice, and just like the podcast. And the reason I even mention it is because that album ended up being really special for my whole life. It was 2 weeks, and I just recorded using really simple arrangements. My sister sang with me, some other students. I had a violinist came in and bass, and Joe played some instruments, piano. I played guitar and sang and just did my own harmonies. It was really, really simple. But the reason I mention it is because that recording has still to this day been touching people. God just kind of blessed it. I mean, I'm kind of again, this is going back to that whole idea that I'm amazed what music can do. But like I've just in the last 6 months or so heard from some people that came up to me and said, "Hey, by the way, your CD Praying Twice, that like I still listen to it." And when my or another person said, I think, when my mom was dying, we played this music for her while she was, in her last moments of life. And it really helped us because it was so peaceful. And I'm like, wow. And I've been getting stories like that ever since I recorded it. And it's it's kind of like humbling for me to think that I just did something when I was a college student for, 2 weeks, and 20 years later, somebody is being touched by that. That's the power of music. I mean, think about that. That's amazing that can happen. Especially when I think the music is spiritual and it's given over to that, it's directed towards that spiritual end. I mean, all music's good, and certainly I think on every level, music has a spiritual element. But when we specifically direct it towards the worship of God or connecting to our spiritual life or just expressing something spiritually, it really touches people. And sometimes people kind of fall in love with that and they keep it as part of their lives for years and years and years. And that's something that I've been blessed to be able to do for people. It's really amazing. So that happened. And then around that same time, I was asked to participate as a musician in the band in the Steubenville conferences, the same conference that I mentioned earlier that I had been so touched by God by standing up in the crowd. And I got to sing with that musician that was at that conference, Jim Cowan. He's a great Catholic songwriter and musician, worship leader. And so I started entering into sort of professional music at that point because I was being paid, a decent wage to sing for these conferences the whole summer. So that was pretty cool. And around this time, I got married, and my kind of transition from being a student into being a working adult started, and being a husband as well. And around that same time, also, I was asked to sing for conferences that they were putting on in other places. Um, Steubenville at that time only had one conference or one or two on campus. And then they decided that they wanted to do conferences in other locations and they needed musicians to lead that. So they asked, I was lucky enough to be in that situation where they asked me to lead the one in Boston, Massachusetts, Steubenville East, which was held at the La Salette Shrine in Attleboro, Massachusetts. And that was like 1997, 1996. And I started playing for this conference, and there's like 2,000 students coming to this, 2,000 young people, teens and their chaperones coming to this big event and a big tent. You can imagine a big white tent with a stage, and it's outside for the most part. It's very hot in the summer. That's when they had these. And some of the experiences I had leading worship and leading music at that event every summer was also transformative for me. I started to see even more how God started changing people's lives through the experience of worship and adoration. Um, at these conferences, at this point, they started doing worship with adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. So, in case you're not Catholic, Catholics believe that God is present in the Eucharistic host. That Jesus said that this is His body, and in a miraculous way, He's present fully in that host. So we put the priest will place that host in a vessel called a monstrance and place it on the altar, and we will spend time in prayer in the context of that presence with us. And that experience of leading music in adoration, worshiping God on the altar. I'm off to the side leading with a full band of music and trying to craft music that's beautiful and worthy of being used for worship and to exalt our understanding of God. And combining the beauty of that music with worship it was amazing. And it was transformative for a lot of people. So I did that. I did that conference for about, I think, 6, 7 years. And it was a real honor to be part of that event because people's lives were changed. I mean, there are so many young people who are now adults who came to me and said, "Hey, I was in the tent when you sang at Steubenville East, and that was so powerful. It changed my life. I was a different person. I came to the conference and I was living this way, and after I left the conference, I changed my life. I started living a different way, and they're so much happier for it and so much more fulfilled because of the experiences they had in encountering God through that. And I was part of that. What an honor to be part of something like that. So I loved those years at Stimulus. I can remember like it was yesterday sitting, being on the stage at this event. And, there's 2,000 teens all, spread out over this big tent. And they pull the lights down. And then in the back, there's they have a spotlight going right to the back of the room. And it's just focused on that monstrance. It's a big gold vessel. It's very shiny. Has a lot of, the light just kind of reflects off of it. So it's this kind of this golden, like a sunburst shape in the back of the room being carried by the priest, and servers, and there's incense, and it's pretty dramatic. And so the light is shining on the Eucharist, and Father starts to process up to the altar. And I remember we used to sing this song called Agnus Dei. It's still being sung actually it's a song by Michael W. Smith, and it just kind of sings these basic lines of Alleluia, for the Lord God Almighty reigns, and just long soaring notes. And it's one of these songs that can start slow and soft and kind of builds and gets louder. And you can get to this kind of really exultant, full volume praise. And I remember I would start the song soft in the back, when Father was in the back. And as he processed forward, and by the time Father was on the altar, he placed the monstrance on the altar. And we would just be playing this music and just praising God in this massive, just beautiful sound with violin and piano and just voices singing. And there's 2,000 students just completely entering into this, which is amazing because the average teenager doesn't spend a lot of time praising God, on average in his regular day-to-day life. But the power of the music, the power of that moment, it drew people in. It allowed people to sort of put aside their preconceptions of what God was about and really understand something more. And sure, there was talks and there was other elements, but the music was a huge part of that experience. It wouldn't be the same without it. What a gift. So anyway, I remember those some of those memories. And ever since, I've done a lot of other things since then. I've recorded more albums, and after around that time, I took a job working in the church. So I had you know a lot of I had a lot of experience doing praise and worship as a music director at a parish. I did youth ministry and campus ministry for 2 years, or two jobs, very early in my career. And then after that, I actually got to become a music director at a parish where I got the job based on my reputation from doing these conferences and my recordings. And very large parish, and I learned to work in the parish setting and leading music for mass as well. And I've been working and singing at parishes ever since. And I guess to summarize all this, what have I learned from this? What does it mean? How has it transformed me? Like I said, it's amazing how when we direct music to our spiritual center, to God, to the place in ourselves that's hungering for something more, and we direct that energy upward, and we let that voice cry out, right? That voice of wanting something more. It touches people, and it really does help transform their lives. It helps transform my life as well. So that's kind of part two of my musical journey story. Like I said, we're going to have some special guests on the podcast. This podcast is mostly going to be conversations that I'm having with other people. But thank you for sharing this part of the podcast with me, and we'll see you next time. God bless.